Tonight on Newshour, trade meets tension. Britain's Prime Minister Keir Starmer is in India for his first official visit since taking office. A two-day stop in Mumbai focused on turning the UK-India trade deal signed in July into tangible results. Well, it's a mission framed around commerce, culture and cooperation, but also controversy. The agreement, hailed in London as the best post-Brexit trade deal yet, offers major tariff cuts on British goods, yet Starmer has ruled out any expansion of visa access for Indian professionals. Now, that's a move that's drawn criticism in Delhi. Well, behind the glossy photo ops lies a delicate diplomatic balancing act, ambition weighed against caution, as both sides seek to deepen ties without friction. The challenge will be whether Britain's new leadership can deliver real outcomes from what has long been a symbolic partnership. We'll cross live to our correspondent in Mumbai for the latest, and later we'll hear from two analysts offering sharply different perspectives. But first, let's take a listen to Keir Starmer's presser after the trade deal was signed back on the 24th of July.
It is good for British workers in cutting-edge manufacturing, whisky distillers across Scotland, and the service sector in London, in Manchester and in Leeds. It is good for consumers because it will bring down prices on Indian goods in the United Kingdom, like clothes and shoes and food, and it will deliver benefits for the long term. It will add about £4.8 billion to the UK economy every year, and £2.2 billion to wages, and hundreds of millions of pounds to regions and nations up and down the United Kingdom. The most economically significant trade deal that the UK has made since leaving the EU. And I think I can say that it's one of the most comprehensive deals that India has ever done. So thank you, Prime Minister, for your leadership and for your pragmatism. And I'd like to thank everybody who's worked so hard to get this deal over the line. And, you know, as I've said before, and as we were just discussing in our tete-a-tete, we've entered a new global era, and that is one that requires us to step up, not to stand aside, to deliver for the British people by building deeper partnerships and alliances. And today is very much confirmation of that approach.
OK, let's head to Mumbai now for the latest and to see how India's press is framing the visit. Rebecca, always good to see you. Tell us then, how is this trip being received on the ground? What are India's newspapers and broadcasters saying about Starmer's tone, and also the significance of this first visit to India as British Prime Minister?
Well, Guy, I can tell you that here in Mumbai there are posters and billboards plastered across the city welcoming Keir Starmer. So that just goes to show that this is being treated as a very significant visit. The UK Prime Minister's office describes it as a trade mission. It's Keir Starmer's first official trip to India, and he's brought with him more than 100 CEOs, entrepreneurs, heads of cultural institutions and universities. Among the delegation are the likes of executives from British Airways and Rolls-Royce. Media here are widely reporting that this is a chance for India to try to capitalise on the opportunities that are presented by the trade deal that was signed between the UK and India. And of course, this also comes as India has been hit with tariffs of 50% by US President Donald Trump, as he cited India's purchases of oil from Russia. So this makes the visit all the more important at this time. Now, the trade deal was signed by the UK and India in July, but it hasn't come into effect yet. It's expected to come into effect by next year. Keir Starmer today says that he wants this deal to be implemented as soon as possible. This also comes as his Labour Party is facing declining popularity in the UK polls. So anything that can be done to boost growth and jobs is good for him. Now, this trade deal would see the UK benefiting in the sense that car exports to India, for example, would become cheaper. And for India, exports of textiles to the UK would become cheaper. Starmer has, however, said that he does not want to discuss a visa deal during this visit. Now, India has been trying to get easier access for its people to the UK, but this is something that the two sides failed to see eye to eye on during negotiations. So Starmer clearly doesn't really want this to come up. The British Prime Minister will be meeting India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi tomorrow for bilateral talks. We'll be tracking developments and we'll keep you updated on this story.
OK, let's bring in our guests now for a closer look at what's really driving this relationship. Joining us first, Devasha Pant, a political analyst based in London who specialises in South Asian affairs. Then we're going to hear from Andy Preston, former mayor of Middlesbrough and now a political commentator. Devasha, it's really good to have you on the show again. Thanks for joining us. Tell us then, how is Starmer's visit being interpreted across the region? Is it genuine engagement, positivity, or is it seen more as just sort of calculated diplomacy?
Well, first, thank you for having me here again. And I wouldn't call this visit to India either a genuine engagement or a calculated diplomacy. Rather, it is something much older and much familiar, and I'd call it a neo-mercantile re-entanglement. Because, you know, 400 years ago, Britain's presence in India began the same way through the trade. And the East India Company arrived not with diplomacy or ideals, but with commerce that later turned into politics. Today's visit echoes that, a push to regain market, investment, and relevance through economic ties rather than a shared value. And the timing also matters here. Just weeks ago, from 31st August to 1st September, China hosted the Shanghai Cooperation Organization Summit in Tianjin, which offered billions in finance, AI, developmental aid to the global south. And India has used that platform to reopen limited cooperation with China, such as resuming direct flight and opening the border trade. And they have also negotiated a bloc-wide AI cooperation agreement that emphasizes equal rights in access to AI technology and deepened its special and privileged ties with Russia, especially through the energy and oil trade. So the Starmer trip is, I think, less about friendship and more about strategic re-commerce, Britain trying to buy back the influence in a region where power and partnership are now finally defined on Asia's term.
Fantastic phrases there. Re-commerce, re-entanglement. Whatever word you choose to describe it, what level of strategic value does Delhi actually place on developing deeper ties for Britain at this stage of its own global rise?
Mm-hmm. So understand why Delhi values deeper ties with Britain. We have to start by understanding Modi's India. Since his first election in 2014, Modi has repositioned India from a post-colonial democracy to a civilizational power. And over the past decade, India has become the voice of the global south, a technology and manufacturing hub, and a diplomatic swing between the East and the West. And for Modi, the goal has always been strategic autonomy, to engage with everyone but depend on no one. In that sense, ties with Britain are pragmatic. They bring access to capital, education, and advanced technology, but without compromising the Indian sovereignty. And Britain, on the other hand, approaches India from a place of declining leverage. Post-Brexit and post-hegemony, it faces sluggish growth, influence, and restless workforce. And it really needs investment, trade, and global relevance as much as India once did. So this relationship is not revitalized, rather it is reversalist, and the former empire now seeks access, the former colony dictates the terms, and it's India's turn to set the pace and Britain's turn to adapt.
India's turn to set the pace indeed. Now, as well as the trade specifics, the pragmatic, of course, like all of these big geopolitical relationships, there's also this symbolic. Symbolically, how important is it for India to stand alongside Britain now, do you think, but to do so as very much an equal partner?
Okay, well, symbolically, the idea of India or Asia as a whole standing alongside Britain as an equal partner is kind of already outdated. The balance of power has clearly shifted. Asia today is home to over 60% of the world's population and is driving more than half of the global economic growth. So India alone has passed the UK in size and strength, and it is now the world's fifth largest economy with a projected GDP of $4.19 trillion in 2025, while Britain sits in sixth place. India's population is also significantly larger and approximately 1.46 billion compared to UK's 69.6 million, and its purchasing power is substantially greater. And, even inside Britain, the changes is even more striking. British Indians are now the wealthiest ethnic group in the UK. They also have one of the highest employment rate, around 79%, and also are overrepresented in skilled professions like medicine, finance, and law. So Britain partners with India today because it needs to, not because it leads to. For India and for other fast-growing Asian economies like Indonesia and Vietnam, working with Britain is about gaining access and opportunity rather than seeking validation. And the equal footing is no longer just between London and Delhi. It is between a rising Asia and a changing West, with Britain now having to adjust to a world where it plays a smaller role.
It's very interesting. Do you think, just to delve a bit deeper on that, do you think that Britain can adjust to that, has adjusted? Is there any sense in which the British, and I'm a Brit, but the British are a bit deluded in this sense, that this unequal, this reversal of the dynamic is something that Brits haven't spotted, or they still assume that they are in some senses slightly superior somehow in the relationship, when most of the economic data points to the opposite?
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a great question. Well, I do think that Britain is trying to adapt to it, not necessarily because it is trying to, but because it has to. And I do see a smaller glimmer of hope, but we really have to wait and watch how this deal turns out, how this visit turns into a greater policy discussion. So we just have to wait and watch now.
Okay, then looking beyond this trade deal, Devasha, what have you seen in terms of concrete outcomes emerging, and what does Delhi really hope to see delivered?
Okay, so the agreement itself is already significant. It aims to push bilateral trade beyond the current £38 billion a year and cut duties on Indian exports such as textile, automotive components, spices, and pharmaceutical, which together make up a major share of India's export basket. In return, it opens India's fast-growing market to financial services, legal firms, and renewable energy companies, and higher education institutions as well. And these are all critical to Britain's post-Brexit growth strategy. It also lays the groundwork for collaboration on the green technology and defense manufacturing as well, and new framework for for digital trade and intellectual property. And for Delhi, these are not small wins. They are direct support to India's ambition to become a global tech and manufacturing hub, to attract foreign investment into its infrastructures and expand its presence in high-value service industries. So the context really matters here. As you know, as again, India is projected to reach 4.19 trillion in 2025, and the middle class in India alone is somewhere around 400 to 500. And yeah, this gives Delhi an enormous leverage. So British companies want access to that scale, while India capital, technology, and a high-value partnership. And for London, this deal is not desirable; it is essential. Britain needs to diversify its trade beyond Europe and need to find growth market and stay relevant in this multipolar global economy. And for Delhi, the deal signals that India is negotiating as an equal or maybe even stronger partner. And so how do we interpret this? This is definitely more than a trade pact. It is maybe a sign of a new global order where people have shifting eastwards and where Asia drives the global growth, where Britain must engage not from a position of dominance, but of necessity. The partnership is still valuable, but again, the terms are now being set by Delhi as much as they are being set by London.
A new global order indeed. Well, Devasha, we're very grateful indeed to you for your analysis. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's bring in my next guest now, Andy Preston, who is former Mayor of Middlesbrough and now, of course, a political commentator. Andy, always good to see you. How much does this trip, do you think, allow Keir Starmer to project authority abroad, define Britain's post-Brexit direction, if you will?
Hello, Guy. I think the trip is really good for Keir Starmer. Whether it turns out to be good for Britain, we just have to wait and see. We have to see what kind of deals are done and whether they are a net benefit. But I think for people in Britain who are looking at the newspapers, the front pages, who are looking at the financial press or on TV, they're seeing Starmer looking like he's travelling the world, fighting on their behalf and doing deals. So it's really good for his image, which British viewers and listeners will know is severely depleted and damaged in recent months. So it's great for Keir Starmer. I think outside of the UK, I'm not sure this really resonates. I am aware that in India, it is being covered in the mainstream press, in the business press, and there's other coverage of Starmer's visit too. But I'm not sure if the person in the street in India and certainly in other countries in Asia and beyond are really that aware or care too much about Keir Starmer's visit. So I don't think we should actually think this is too significant or meaningful right now.
Yeah, and clearly, Andy, as you say, his team are trying to get some political capital at home during a period that's very, very difficult for him. What are they hoping to get from this trip? What do they need to do back at home just to try and bring things back on track?
What would really work, what would really put him in a good light, which is what happened with the recent Trump visit, where a bunch of huge investments were announced. Now, actually, the investments that were announced from Blackstone and I think Google and maybe Microsoft and others, adding up to about $150 billion worth. They were coming anyway. They weren't really anything to do with the Trump visit, but they were announced at the time and Starmer was there. So it made both Starmer and Trump like they'd put something together. And I think what Starmer needs from India is something concrete, whether it's a deal for maybe a major deal for British Airways, a major deal for BP, a major deal for something else where we're seen to benefit. There's some agreement that's going to translate it ideally into jobs, because when it goes in the press that there might be a boost to GDP 2, 3, 4 years down the line, that doesn't really mean anything to people in the street. But the idea of 5,000 jobs or $20 billion coming for a new data centre in your town. That means an awful lot, doesn't it? So that's what Starmer's got to aim for, but I can't see big announcements being signed in this trip.
And he's walking this tightrope too, isn't he? He's taking a cautious line on visas, whilst at the same time trying to deepen economic ties. Is that problematic, do you think?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think my understanding is that what Modi would like and what most people would like to see is some of the visa rules relaxed. They'd like to see more people from India being able to come to the UK to learn skills to take back to help boost their economy. We're good at some things that perhaps they aren't as good at. But of course, that's politically incredibly sensitive and toxic right now. So Starmer will not want to be seen to be remotely flexible or generous on visa access right now. It's impossible for him to show any leeway in that.
And going back to July's signing, this flagship agreement, this deal, have you seen any visible, clear follow-through after that signing to really start to prove that the deal itself has got any teeth, any substance? No,
and I think it's too early, Guy. My understanding is this thing was always expected to take many months to go through the necessary bureaucratic process in both countries. So when these things are signed, what's really being signed is an understanding to get this done, to get the agreement formally sorted, rather than a binding agreement at the time. It's just an agreement to try and bring this together in a formal, legally binding way. So these things, when they're signed by the politicians, it's more PR than substance. And sure, it might well, and it usually does end in something that has some legal substance, but at the time it's more of a thing for the media, for the press, and it's about PR. More PR than substance. He's obviously now hoping that he can turn these optics of handshakes and signatures into some kind of lasting foreign policy success that will translate into some kind of success, some kind of recovery, if you like, at home. Just before I let you go, Andy, last time we had you on the show, your predictions for Mr. Starmer were not exactly positive. You characterised a man living on borrowed time. We've seen the sort of cheerful scenes in the cockpit, the positive optics. Has any of your view now changed at all? No, I still feel the same way. I talk to people from all walks of life, whether it's the taxi driver or somewhere in the queue at the shop, and I remain convinced that he just doesn't resonate with the public. Starmer doesn't work with the public. He's not that kind of person. And so long as that continues and they continue to languish in the polls, and they are miles behind the leaders, as the Tory party are, they're miles behind. His party are restless. The MPs are starting to look at next May's local council elections, not elections for MPs, but elections for councillors. And Labour looks set to have a bit of quite a bloodbath, with Reform taking control of many councils from Labour next May, and some from the Tories. And when that happens, I think it's the end of Starmer. It might be the end of Starmer before then, but we've just had the political party conference season. It's just drawing to a close. And I think that was probably Keir Starmer's last Labour Party conference as leader. Andy, it is always great to have your analysis. Thank you so much for joining us, as always, on Newshour. OK, Keir Starmer's India visit then follows a landmark trade deal, but attention now turns to delivery, to making it happen. The challenge ahead, turning promises into progress and diplomacy into durable trust. Well, that is all for this edition of Newshour from all of us here at A News. Thanks for being with us.